Welcome back to our channel, Serious Story Sessions. If you like our content and wish to see more from us, please click that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for future videos. Your support means the world to us, and we thank you. Enjoy the video. What originally was just a locket passed down through generations has now become the center of a silent war in my family. After learning that my cousin is faking a PhD to receive my great-grandmother's locket, I learn he intends to sell it for profit. Now I'm torn between exposing the truth or letting this lie fester. Let me back up a little. This locket isn't just any piece of jewelry. It belonged to my great-grandmother, Nana Rose. She was a formidable woman, sharp as a tack even into her 90s. When she passed away 5 years ago, her will held a few surprises. Most things were divided equally, but there was one specific clause for this locket. It's a beautiful piece of jewelry, gold with intricate filigree and a tiny sapphire in the center. Inside, there are faded pictures of Nana Rose and her late husband from their wedding day. It's not just valuable because it's old gold. It has immense sentimental value to everyone. The clause stated that the locket would go to the first grandchild, or great-grandchild, but none of the grandchildren were pursuing higher education to earn a PhD. Nana Rose had always valued education above all else. She believed it was the key to unlocking potential, even though she never had the chance to go to college herself. She often said her biggest regret was not getting a doctorate. My parents told me she always saw higher education as a legacy she wanted to pass on. At the time the will was read, I was already well into my master's degree. I remember feeling a surge of determination. A PhD had always been a distant goal for me, something I thought I'd pursue someday. But Nana Rose's will made it feel tangible. I'd always been academically inclined, loved learning, and knew I wanted to push myself. I currently have a great, lucrative job in tech, which has nothing to do with academia. But the PhD is, for me, for Nana Rose, and yes, for that locket. It represents a promise, a connection. My younger cousin, Leo, is the antagonist in this story. He's 2 years younger than me. Leo's never been one for academics. He barely finished high school. Then he tried community college for a semester or two before dropping out. He's jumped from job to job since then, mostly retail, a little bit of landscaping, nothing really sticking. He's a charming guy, charismatic even, but he lacks follow-through. He's always been good at talking his way into and out of things. For the past couple of years, my family has known I'm working on my PhD. It's a huge commitment. I work my full-time job during the day, then spend evenings and weekends on my research and dissertation. I'm about halfway through making steady progress. It's a long haul, but I enjoy the challenge. My family is proud, always asking me about my progress. Then, about 6 months ago, Leo suddenly started talking about going back to school. At first, it was just vague mentions of getting serious about his future. Then, he started dropping hints about advanced studies. A few months after that, he announced at a family dinner that he'd been accepted into a doctoral program at a local university. I remember the exact moment. We were all at Aunt Carol's for Sunday lunch. Leo, looking very pleased with himself, mentioned he was starting his PhD next semester. My mom, bless her heart, immediately made the connection to Nana Rose's locket. Oh, Leo, how wonderful, just like Nana Rose wanted. You and Kira, that's me, are both working on your doctorates. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I knew instantly that something was off. Leo's history with education was dismal. He'd never shown any interest. He couldn't even stick with community college. A PhD? It just didn't compute. But everyone else was so excited. My aunts and uncles were congratulating him, asking vague questions about his field of study. Leo mumbled something about business management and looking at market trends. He sounded vague, but confident enough to fool people who didn't know any better. After that, the PhD talk became a regular thing whenever Leo was around. He'd make comments about late-night studying or dense academic papers. He never really elaborated, just used these buzzwords. He never mentioned specific professors, courses, or even the name of his program. He always kept it very general. The family, overjoyed, started making comments about how the locket would definitely be a competition between us now. They thought it was cute, a friendly race. I just smiled and nodded, a growing dread churning inside me. I started doing some digging. It felt sneaky, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I knew the university he claimed to be attending. It's a reputable school, not some fly-by-night operation. I went to their website, navigated to their doctoral programs, and even looked up their admissions process. I couldn't find any public record of a Leo Jacobs enrolled in any PhD program, let alone one starting next semester. Of course, student records are private, so this wasn't conclusive proof, but it definitely deepened my suspicion. Then I started asking around, very subtly. I have a cousin, Sarah, who is good friends with Leo's girlfriend, Chloe. I casually asked Sarah if Chloe had mentioned anything about Leo's studies. Sarah said Chloe hadn't mentioned anything specific, just that Leo was busy with school. But then Sarah added, "It's funny though, Chloe was complaining the other day about how Leo hasn't been looking for a job, and she's worried about how they're going to pay rent. You'd think a PhD student would have some kind of stipend or assistantship, right?" That comment hit me hard. PhD students, especially at the university he claimed to be attending, often have funding, TAs, or RAs. It was another crack in his story. The final piece of the puzzle came from another cousin, David, who is a year younger than Leo and still lives in our hometown. David is a bit of a gossip, but usually reliable. I called him under the pretense of catching up. I asked him if he'd seen much of Leo lately and how he was liking his new PhD program. David laughed. PhD? Are you serious? He's not doing a PhD. He's working at the new game store down on Main Street part-time. He told me he just says that to the family because he thinks it sounds good, and he's hoping to get Nana Rose's locket. My stomach dropped. It was confirmed. He was lying. All of it. The late-night studying, the dense papers, the market trends. It was all a fabrication designed to manipulate our family and secure an inheritance he wasn't entitled to. A wave of disbelief, then anger washed over me. Not just for the locket, but for the disrespect, the blatant deceit, and the way he was making a mockery of something Nana Rose held so dear, something I was genuinely working so hard for. I knew I had to confront him. Not in front of the family, not yet. I wanted to give him a chance to explain, to come clean, to retract his lie before it became even bigger. I called him and asked to meet for coffee. He sounded surprised, but agreed. We met at a quiet cafe. He walked in, smiling, charismatic as usual, talking about how busy he was with his studies. I cut him off. "Leo," I said, my voice low and steady, "we need to talk about your PhD." His smile faltered. "What about it?" he asked, trying to sound nonchalant, but I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. "The truth, Leo," I said, leaning forward slightly. "Are you really enrolled in a doctoral program?" he stammered. "Of course I am. Why would you ask that?" He tried to sound offended, but his voice cracked slightly. "Because I checked," I replied, my gaze unwavering. "I checked the university website. I talked to Sarah. I talked to David. You're not enrolled. You're working at a game store." His face went pale. The charming facade crumbled completely. He looked like a deer caught in headlights. He tried to deny it again, a desperate, half-hearted attempt. "That's not fair! You shouldn't be digging into my life!" "It's not digging into your life, Leo, when you're openly lying to our entire family about something Nana Rose explicitly put in her will," I shot back, my voice rising slightly despite my efforts to stay calm. "You're trying to steal something that has meaning to all of us, something she wanted to be earned." He finally broke. He slumped in his chair, looking defeated. I heard you were almost done," he mumbled, not looking at me. "And the locket is so cool?" I thought I could just say I was doing it. No one would check, right? And maybe I could start a real program later. It was just a way to get it first. A way to get it first? "So, you admit you're lying, that you're trying to defraud the family and disrespect Nana Rose's wishes?" I asked, feeling a cold fury settle in my chest. "Do you have any idea how much work a PhD is? How much I'm sacrificing for it? And you think you can just claim one to get an inheritance?" He finally looked at me, his eyes wide, almost pleading. I know, it was stupid. But you're already so successful. You have your fancy job. You don't need the locket as much as I do." He saw it as a thing to be sold, not a legacy. "It's not about the money for me, Leo. It's about what it represents. And it's certainly not about you needing it more. It's about honesty and respect." I took a deep breath, trying to rein in my anger. "You have two choices. You can tell the family the truth, that you're not in a PhD program, or I will." He stared at me, his jaw clenched. "You wouldn't," he whispered. "Try me," I said, my voice flat. "This isn't a game, Leo. This is our family, and Nana Rose's memory." He pushed his chair back, a flicker of something ugly in his eyes. It wasn't just defeat, it was resentment. "Fine," he hissed. "But if you tell them, I'll never forgive you. And I'll tell them you were trying to keep me from it. That you're just jealous." "Jealous?" Of what, your lie? I scoffed. Just tell them, Leo. Make it right. He stood up, shoving his hands in his pockets. I'm not saying anything, he said, his voice low and dangerous. And neither are you, or you'll regret it. He turned and walked out, leaving me alone at the table, my coffee growing cold. That was the start of the massive, secretive rift. We didn't speak for weeks. When we did see each other at family gatherings, the air between us was thick with unspoken tension. We'd exchange strained smiles, make polite but minimal conversation. No one else seemed to notice the coldness, or, if they did, they attributed it to busy schedules or normal family squabbles. But for me, every interaction felt like walking on eggshells. I kept my end of the unspoken bargain for a while, hoping he would crack, hoping he would realize the gravity of his deception. I didn't want to be the one to expose him, to cause a huge scandal in the family. I hated the idea of tearing our family apart, especially over an object, however meaningful. But the lie continued to fester. Leo, emboldened by my silence, started to become even more brazen. He began attending classes. He'd occasionally mention having to leave family events early because of study group meetings or lectures. My aunts and uncles would cluck sympathetically, telling him how dedicated he was. My parents, while still proud of my progress, would sometimes make comments like, "Wow, Leo is really dedicated too. It's going to be a close race for that Locket." It grated on my nerves. It felt like he was winning and I was complicit in his deceit. One time, my mom asked him, "Leo, what exactly is your dissertation topic?" This was during another family lunch. He paused, then brightly said, "Oh, it's about the future of digital marketing for small businesses. Super fascinating, really delves into consumer psychology." He even used some academic-sounding jargon that he must have picked up from somewhere. My mom, not knowing better, nodded approvingly. I almost choked on my mashed potatoes. My dissertation, which I spend countless hours on, is on post-colonial literature and its intersection with modern, digital narratives. It's specific, complex, and deeply researched. His answer was so generic it could be a paragraph from a marketing textbook. I still didn't say anything, but the resentment built up inside me. I was working so hard, pouring my soul into my studies, while he was just spinning tales. He started to act like the locket was already his. He would make comments like, "When I get Nana Rose's locket, I'm going to put it on a special display." It was infuriating. Then came the next twist in Leo's behavior. Instead of just maintaining the lie, he started to subtly undermine me. At another family gathering, when my parents were proudly talking about my research, Leo chimed in, "Oh, that's great. Though, my program really emphasizes the practical application of theory. Some academic fields can get a bit removed from reality, if you know what I mean." He gave me a pointed look. It was a slight, dismissive jab at my humanities-based PhD, implying it was less valuable or less real than his imaginary business one. My mom looked a little confused, but everyone else just nodded along. No one picked up on the subtle dig, but I did. I realized then that his lie wasn't just about getting the locket, it was also about elevating himself and, by extension, subtly diminishing my genuine achievements. It wasn't enough for him to pretend, he had to make his pretense seem superior. This stung more than the locket itself. It felt like a personal attack on my dedication and my field of study. The silence I had agreed to was becoming unbearable. It was eating at me. Every time he spoke about his PhD, I felt a physical pang of anxiety and anger. I started to resent family gatherings because I knew I would have to listen to his fabrications. My own progress on my dissertation, which should have been a source of pride, felt tainted by his charade. I wrestled
The joy
with what
was
to do.
slowly draining out of
Exposing
it.
him would cause an explosion. My family is generally peace-loving, and conflict is usually swept under the rug. This would be a nuclear bomb to them. If I exposed the truth, they would be plagued with the same betrayal I was. The weight of it all became a physical burden, pressing down on my chest. I couldn't sleep. My dissertation, usually my refuge, felt like another chore. I kept reliving Leo's smug face, his dismissive comments about my research, his audacity in claiming Nana Rose's legacy. He had turned a meaningful aspiration into a twisted competition, and I was losing just by remaining silent. Then came the invitation for Thanksgiving. Aunt Carol, always the hostess, was throwing a big dinner. Everyone would be there. As I RSVP'd, a cold resolve settled over me. This was it. I couldn't let this fester anymore. It was time for the truth, no matter how uncomfortable. The decision made, my mind immediately shifted into planning mode. I was a researcher, after all. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about evidence and justice. I needed to ensure there was no room for doubt. No way for Leo to charmingly talk his way out of it this time. My first step was to revisit the university he claimed to attend. Student privacy laws meant I couldn't get specific enrollment details, but I focused on public information. I checked their official graduation ceremony records from the past 6 months, cross-referencing names against any publicly listed doctoral recipients. Nothing. No Leo Jacobs. Then I looked at their academic calendar for dissertation defense schedules. Most universities publicize these, allowing faculty and even the public to attend. Again, a thorough search yielded no upcoming or recently completed defenses under his name. Next, I needed to solidify the proof of his actual employment. David's word was good, but I needed something undeniable. I drove past the game store he supposedly worked at. Sure enough, there was a schedule taped to the front door, visible through the glass. Leo J. was listed for several shifts that week. I took a discreet photo with my phone. I also checked the store's public social media. One of their recent posts featured a new team member, Leo, with a picture of him smiling behind the counter, holding a new game release. That was irrefutable. My final piece of preparation was less about gathering external evidence and more about constructing a narrative. I drafted a concise, bullet-pointed outline in my head, mentally rehearsing the sequence of events. I needed to present the facts calmly, logically, and without emotion. This wasn't about my feelings. It was about Nana Rose's wishes and Leo's blatant disrespect. I also prepared printouts of the game store's social media post and the university's public academic calendar, highlighting the absence of his name. Tangible evidence felt stronger than just my words. Thanksgiving Day arrived, and the air was thick with the scent of turkey, sage, and impending doom. I wore a dress I felt confident in, wanting to project an aura of calm authority. My stomach churned, but my resolve remained firm. The house was bustling. Cousins chased each other, aunts gossiped in the kitchen, and uncles debated sports scores in the living room. Leo was there, looking particularly smug, holding court by the fireplace. He was talking about the rigorous demands of his final semester and how he was looking forward to a break after defending his thesis. My parents beamed at him. Dinner was announced, and everyone crowded around the extended dining table. The food was glorious, a comforting spread of family favorites. We went through the usual pleasantries, the jokes, the catching up. I ate slowly, my eyes occasionally flicking to Leo, who was now regaling Aunt Carol with a convoluted story about a difficult peer-reviewed paper. Just as Aunt Carol was about to serve dessert, Nana Rose's famous apple pie, Leo cleared his throat. Everyone turned to him. He stood up, a confident, self-satisfied grin on his face. He held a piece of paper in his hand. "Family," he announced, his voice carrying through the sudden lull in conversation. "I have some wonderful news." He paused for dramatic effect. After years of incredibly hard work, late nights, and intense study, I am proud to say that as of last week, I have officially defended my dissertation and been awarded my Doctor of Business Administration. A wave of gasps and excited murmurs swept through the room. My mom let out a joyous cry. My dad clapped him on the back. My aunts and uncles erupted in congratulations. Leo, basking in the adoration, held up the paper he was holding. It looked like a printed certificate, though it seemed a little too glossy and new to be an official
Leo continued,
university
his
document.
voice swelling with triumph. "With that, I believe the conditions of Nana Rose's will have been met. It's time for the locket to come home to its rightful owner." He looked directly at me, a victorious glint in his eyes, as if daring me to challenge him. A heavy silence fell, everyone's gaze now fixed between me and Leo. My chest tightened, but a strange sense of calm settled over me. This was it. He had forced my hand. I took a deep breath, pushing my chair back slightly. The scrape of wood on the floor was loud in the sudden quiet. "Leo," I said, my voice steady, cutting through the celebratory chatter that had started to bubble up again. All eyes turned to me. "That's a remarkable claim, especially since you've never been enrolled in a doctoral program." The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Leo's triumphant smile vanished, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief, then a flash of pure panic. "Kira, what are you talking about?" my mom asked, her voice laced with confusion and a hint of alarm. "Don't be silly. Leo just announced he graduated." "I'm not being silly, Mom," I replied, maintaining eye contact with Leo, whose face was rapidly draining of color. "I'm stating a fact. Leo is not and has never been a PhD student at that university. He certainly hasn't graduated." Leo finally found his voice. "This is ridiculous. She's jealous. She's trying to undermine me." His voice was high-pitched, a stark contrast to his earlier smooth delivery. He gestured wildly at me. She just doesn't want me to get the locket. Is that so, Leo? I asked, raising an eyebrow. I reached into my purse, pulling out the folded printouts. Because I've done my research, unlike you. I held up one of the printouts. I checked the university's public records. There is no Leo Jacobs listed as having graduated with a DBA in the past 6 months, or any other doctoral program. There are no public records of your dissertation defense, which is standard procedure. In fact, I pulled out another sheet. Their academic calendar for the entire year shows no record of a Leo Jacobs ever submitting a dissertation proposal or defending one. My family looked from me to Leo, their faces a mixture of confusion, dawning horror, and disbelief. Aunt Carol, still holding the apple pie, looked like she might faint. And speaking of your rigorous studies, I continued, my voice unwavering, it's hard to reconcile that with your actual employment. I held up the picture of Leo at the game store. This is a photo from the official social media page of Level Up Games on Main Street, posted just last week, announcing their new team member, Leo. And this, I showed the picture of the work schedule, is a photo I took of their employee schedule, showing Leo J working shifts this week. The silence was deafening. My parents stared at Leo, their mouths slightly agape. My dad slowly put his hand on my mom's arm, his expression hardening. Leo, meanwhile, had sunk back into his chair, the color completely gone from his face. The fake certificate lay forgotten on the table beside him. He looked utterly exposed, cornered. Leo, my dad finally said, his voice low and dangerous. Is this true? Leo stammered, his eyes darting around the table, desperate for an escape. I can't explain. It's a part-time job while I was finishing up. Finishing up what, Leo? I pressed. A lie? You admitted to me weeks ago that you weren't enrolled. You admitted you were doing this just to get the locket, to sell it. Gasps rippled through the table. Sell it? My mom's voice was a horrified whisper. Nana Rose's locket? You wanted to sell it? Leo just looked down at his lap, defeated. He couldn't meet anyone's eyes. The charming facade was completely shattered, revealing a pathetic, deceitful boy. The shock on my family's faces was palpable. Their earlier pride and joy for him twisted into expressions of mortification and betrayal. My dad's face was a mask of anger. My aunts looked crestfallen, their earlier congratulations now tasting like ash. This is appalling, Leo, my dad said, his voice shaking with barely suppressed fury. To lie to all of us, to disrespect Nana Rose's memory like this, to try and defraud your own family. My mom started to tear up, looking at Leo with heartbroken eyes. How could you, sweetie? We were so proud. We thought you were finally finding your path. Justice, in that moment, felt cold and sharp. The air was thick with the weight of shattered trust. Leo remained silent, shrinking in his seat, utterly shamed. The dream of the locket, earned through honest effort and academic rigor, remained intact, untainted by his deception. The path to Nana Rose's legacy was now clear, paved not with lies, but with hard work and truth. The conversation around the table quickly shifted from celebratory to condemnatory, with every family member, one by one, expressing their disappointment and disgust. The apple pie went untouched. Leo finally looked up, his eyes bloodshot and brimming with tears. He pushed his chair back with a violent scrape that echoed in the stunned silence. You ruined everything, Kira, he spat, his voice trembling with a mixture of rage and raw humiliation. He didn't wait for a response, just stumbled away from the table, knocking a chair askew as he fled the dining room. The front door slammed shut moments later, shaking the entire house. Aunt Carol, still frozen with the pie dish, let out a small whimper. My mom covered her mouth with her hand, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. My dad looked utterly deflated, his earlier anger slowly giving way to a profound sadness. The celebratory atmosphere had completely evaporated, leaving behind a heavy pall of shock and betrayal. I felt no triumph, only a deep, aching emptiness. The truth was out, stark and undeniable, but it had come at a cost. The family, fractured and reeling, was now caught in the crossfire of Leo's deception and my unwelcome exposé. I had acted out of conviction, for Nana Rose's memory, for the integrity of my own hard work, but the pain radiating from my family was palpable. My mom finally lowered her hand, her eyes red-rimmed as she looked at me. Kira, she began, her voice hoarse, why didn't you say anything sooner? Why let it go on for so long? The question hung in the air, weighted with her hurt. I sighed, the exhaustion of weeks of internal conflict finally catching up to me. I tried, Mom, I said, my voice softer than I intended. I confronted him weeks ago. I gave him a chance to come clean. I didn't want to be the one to do this. I hoped he would make it right. I gestured vaguely at the empty space where Leo had been, at the untouched dessert. But he just kept escalating the lie. He even tried to undermine my own work. I couldn't let him make a mockery of Nana Rose's legacy, or of what I'm genuinely trying to achieve. My dad pushed his plate away, the remains of his Thanksgiving dinner now an unappetizing mess. He ran a hand over his face. He told you he was lying, and he still went through with this charade? His voice was a raw whisper, laced with disbelief. I nodded, feeling a fresh wave of resentment for Leo's audacity. He admitted it. He wanted the locket to sell it. Another collective gasp went around the table. The idea of Nana Rose's cherished locket being treated as mere currency seemed to wound them almost as deeply as the lie itself. My mom let out a fresh sob, and my dad pulled her into a comforting embrace. Other aunts and uncles murmured their condolences, their earlier disappointment now morphing into sympathy for my parents, and a lingering sense of hurt for themselves. They had all been fooled, all been made to look foolish in their enthusiasm for Leo's fabricated success. Aunt Carol, finally setting the apple pie down with a thud, looked at me, her eyes filled with a sad understanding. "You did the right thing, dear," she said, her voice gentle. "It's a hard truth, but it needed to be told." Her words were a small balm on the sting of the moment. The rest of the evening was a muted affair. The boisterous laughter and light-hearted chatter had vanished, replaced by hushed conversations and the occasional clink of cutlery. No one seemed to have an appetite for dessert. My parents, after a long, tearful conversation with me in the living room, apologized for not seeing through Leo's act, for not noticing my subtle discomfort, for pushing the Locket race narrative that way. They told me how proud they were of my integrity, even amidst the painful fallout. Their support, though delayed, was a comfort. The days following Thanksgiving were filled with awkward phone calls and a flurry of family texts. Leo went silent. His girlfriend, Chloe, called Sarah in tears, confirming Leo had admitted everything to her, too. She was heartbroken and humiliated, and had broken up with him. He had lost her, and by extension, seemingly lost his place in the wider family circle for a time. For me, the immediate aftermath brought a strange sense of liberation. The heavy weight that had been pressing on my chest for months finally lifted. I no longer had to brace myself for Leo's next fabrication, no longer had to endure his subtle digs. My dissertation, which had felt like another chore under the shadow of his lie, began to regain its luster. The joy of pure academic pursuit, the intellectual challenge, the satisfaction of deep research, it all returned. I poured myself back into my studies with renewed vigor. The locket was no longer a symbol of competition, but a beacon, a tangible representation of Nana Rose's belief in education, now cleansed of deceit. I thought of her often, imagining her sharp, knowing gaze, and felt a surge of validation. This wasn't just for me anymore. It was for her, for the principle she held so dear. The final year of my PhD was a relentless marathon. My days blurred into a cycle of work, research, writing, and teaching assistant duties. There were moments of doubt, of utter exhaustion, when I questioned my sanity, but the memory of Nana Rose's quiet determination and the sting of Leo's betrayal pushed me forward. My parents were my biggest cheerleaders, sending care packages, calling regularly, their pride now untainted and unequivocal. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the day arrived. My dissertation defense. I stood before my committee, a panel of formidable scholars, and presented years of my life's work. My topic, post-colonial literature and its intersection with modern digital narratives, felt like a part of me, intricately woven into my identity. The questions were rigorous, challenging, pushing me to the limits of my knowledge, but I was ready. I debated, I clarified, I defended, drawing on every hour of research, every late night of writing. When the committee excused me, telling me they would deliberate, I walked out of the room feeling lightheaded, a mix of terror and exhilaration churning in my stomach. My parents were waiting in the hallway, their faces etched with anxiety. We sat in silence, the minutes stretching into an eternity. Then the door opened. My advisor, Dr. Anya Sharma, stepped out, a warm smile gracing her lips. "Dr. Jacobs," she said, extending her hand. "Congratulations." The words hit me like a physical wave. Dr. Jacobs. It was real. I had done it. My knees felt weak, tears sprang to my eyes, and I embraced Dr. Sharma fiercely. My parents rushed forward, enveloping me in a hug so tight I could barely breathe. Their cheers and tears were the sweetest validation. A few weeks later, there was a small, intimate family gathering at my parents' house. Not a grand celebration like Thanksgiving, but a quiet, heartfelt get together. The air was different now, still tinged with the memory of past conflict, but largely cleared. Leo was not there. He had moved out of town, ostensibly to find himself, a euphemism for distancing himself from the consequences of his actions. My dad cleared his throat, holding a small velvet box in his hand. Everyone looked at him, then at me. "Kira," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "Nana Rose believed in you. We always knew you had this in you. And now, you've done it. You've earned it. Truly and honorably." He opened the box, revealing the familiar gold locket, intricate filigree glinting under the soft lamplight, the tiny sapphire winking in its center. He walked over to me, and with trembling hands fastened the chain around my neck. The cool metal settled against my skin, a tangible connection to generations past, to a woman who valued knowledge above all else. I could feel the faded pictures of Nana Rose and her husband tucked inside, silent witnesses to a legacy fulfilled. I touched the locket, my fingers tracing its delicate edges. It wasn't just gold. It was resilience, dedication, and the unwavering pursuit of truth. It was Nana Rose's dream, finally realized not through deceit, but through genuine, arduous effort. I looked at my family, their faces alight with genuine pride and affection. My mom reached out and squeezed my hand, her eyes shining. There were no more hints of competition, no more vague questions, only respect and admiration. The path to Nana Rose's legacy had been tumultuous, filled with unexpected turns and painful revelations, but in the end, it was clear. The locket was mine, not as a prize in a race, but as a cherished testament to a promise kept, a dream earned, and a truth upheld. And in its quiet weight against my chest, I felt a peace deeper than any victory. If you enjoyed this kind of content, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next batch of stories. See you all next time. Goodbye for now.